Okay. Today is December 4th, and we still have the issues going on with the election fraud and the cases going on around the states that are involved in this. Evidence and witnesses are coming out of the woodwork. And while the news is still trying to defend that voter fraud, and we have Facebook as well still trying to defend that voter fraud is unusual and uncommon, and, you know, as we know, Facebook says that all of those methods are safe and secure. You know, Mark Zuckerberg and his Facebook lies, it appears, just wants to, you know, lie to the American people. It's funny, all his fact checkers on Facebook, you know, they're so quick to want to jump and question everybody, but yet when they put up their own lies, who's fact checking them? That's what I want to know. Who's fact checking Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook? Because, you know, I see all the time when I'm looking here at like Donald Trump's things, they have these pop-ups right here, you know, all over on Trump's page that say Joe Biden is projected winner of the 2020 U.S. presidential election. And, you know, and then they have these things that say, you know, that the voters, U.S. laws have procedure and established institution to ensure the integrity of our elections. I mean, these are the things that are you know, they go and they say, here, let me just share some of this with you. You know, when we look here, it says U.S. laws, procedures, and established institutions to ensure the integrity of our elections. Really, this is, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, he's putting this out like all over the place. When you look at these things, he's got all kind of like things, you know, about, you know, the integrity of it, and that Joe Biden's the winner. You know, and he's saying all these things, but yet none of this is been officially determined yet. I don't know. You know, if I was to post something that was like predetermined, his fact checkers would be all over me telling me, you know, the fact checkers checked and this guy's not, you know, what he's saying hasn't really been determined yet. But yet, when it comes to them, they can go ahead and lie to the public like crazy. And when I say lie to the public like crazy, I mean literally lie to the public like crazy. Because while Facebook, Twitter, most of the news outlets and all these talking head puppet disgraceful goddamn Americans, because they're actors who are reading scripts, and they don't even actually do any kind of investigative reporting. They don't even know what they're reading. I guarantee you the next day you'd ask them questions about what they reported on the night before, they wouldn't even know, because they come in and they read the script and they go home. They don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They don't care. They're disgraceful Americans that will just say whatever they want. They're bought friggin' people. They're just bought, you know. They're disgraceful. Because who would get, I mean, if I was a reporter, I couldn't go on news and deceive the American people just for a paycheck. But obviously, thousands of goddamn reporters across this country are doing just that. It's disgraceful what these people are, just disgraceful. And when I say, like, what I'm saying here, you know, because everybody knows there's a follow-up to the voter fraud. This right here is just in the last election up until now. And I showed this last time. I'll put links again to all these things. This was with the Heritage Foundation. And, you know, they have just from 2016 to 2020, 1,302 proven instances of voter fraud, 1,125 criminal convictions. Now, it gets even more interesting, though, because as we go on right now, which if you look at some of these things, and I'll include all these are dates now of voter fraud in this current 2020 election, presidential election, of people being arrested and charged with voter fraud that nobody's talking about. I don't see it on Mark Zuckerberg's page, Facebook. I don't see his fact checkers going, oh, wait a minute. We found out there's actually people being arrested for hundreds and even thousands of counts of voter fraud across the country involved right now in the 2020 presidential election. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? How nobody's talking about this. Here, take it as a pair charged with voter fraud allegedly submitted thousands of fraudulent applications on behalf of homeless people. Do you believe that? So here we got, and this is just a recent case from this November's election of these people. I'm going to include links to this so everybody can read it. These people were submitting thousands of fraudulent applications. They were going around getting the information from homeless people, filling out mail-in ballots, and then voting for these people. Okay, thousands, not 5 or 6 or 100, thousands of them. Okay, and this is right here. And guess what? Who do you think they were? Democrats. And at the end of this, you gotta wait to the end, because you know what? The Democrats have been trying to comb history since my last video.
Weather and holiday travels are here.
Trying to do something to see if they could.
When you purchase an all-wheel drive.
See if they could. Sorry about that. There was an ad popped up to see if they could possibly find Republican voter fraud. And at the end, boy, do I get the cherry on the cake that they found. So stay tuned for that as we get to the close of this. You're going to love this. Okay, but anyway, like I was saying here, we got, let's go on. We got Limestone County social worker. This is, I know in the last one I had about Limestone County before with social workers and county officials who were involved, Democrats that were involved. This is a new Democrat from the 2020 presidential election. As you can see here, this was from November 6th. She was arrested. She's 134 felony counts involving election fraud for the Democrat. She was, again, padding and stacking votes for Joe Biden. She got arrested. She's being charged with voter fraud. This just happened in the 2020 election. This is going, you don't see this on the news though. You would expect that, if this was the opposite way now. Now, if Joe Biden was accusing Trump, and there was Trump registered Republicans being caught, like, committing voter fraud, it would be all over it would be world news. Believe me, the Pope right now would be out on the goddamn cathedral of the Pope talking about it if it was a Republican. But, it's all Democrats, so you don't hear about it. You got to search for this. You got to find this. You got to go across. And if you go across right now the states and the counties, you will find out that the states and the counties have multiple right now, combined across the nation, literally right now, reaching into the thousands of people being arrested right now from the 2020 presidential election. This that just passes November 3rd, literally nearing the thousands of people being arrested through multiple states for voter fraud. All Democrats, all Democratic poll watchers, all Democratic poll handlers, and all democratically heavily supported Democratic districts. Going on like crazy. You wouldn't believe the fraud that's going on. I mean, it's out of control. And what's coming to surface is out of control. Here, let's take a little bit more look. Michigan man facing felony charges for voter fraud, AG says. In this case here, when you read, there's another one. He was padding the votes. He has I think it was, it is from the November 3rd, this year election, just so you know, a Democrat, of course it's a Democrat, it's amazing, I can't find a Republican doing this stuff, but it's a Democrat, and he had other people that were involved in forging signatures on absentee ballots. Again, the absentee ballots, you see, this is the thing that, when I read on Facebook though, it says that these voting methods are highly secure and protected, and that it's very rare. It's very rare. Very rare, really. It's very rare, but like I say, very rare means, 1,302 cases just in the last 4 years, with 1,125 convictions in the last 4 years. And right now, we're going to be adding near 1,000 to that from what I'm seeing already with going on arrests from the 2020 election. This number is going to be like almost doubled, okay? And let's keep going, though, so we can keep looking here. Man arrested for voter fraud in Lorenz County. This is the one right here. Another one. Authorities in Lorenz County say they have stopped a case of voter fraud. County detectives say a man of 40 filled out an application for an absentee ballot for his mother, who is dead. Now, that's the only one that they're saying about with his mother. There's also tied to this case, if you follow through with it, they're registering quite a few dead people, which now we know, because Giuliano, with the Trump investigation going on right now in the states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, and what have you, they're coming up to and they're reporting about, the dead people voting. More than likely Democrats, I guarantee you, if we don't remove them from this country, we've seen already right now they demand rights for binary beings, non-existent people. They've confounded the posterity to the point they don't know what bathroom to use. They want to let everybody in through our borders, and there's a reason for that. They can have all those illegals registering as mail-in ballots. I mean, there's probably no joke when you look at the mail-in ballots coming out of like Arizona. There's like 1 million Jose Gonzalez's all living at the same address. I mean, it's just incredible. But here, let's keep going. So we got Limestone County individual charged with 134 counts of voter fraud, Attorney General announces. Mind you, this is all related. This is all new. This is not from my last video. This is now new from November 3rd forward. These are all cases taking place right now related to the 2020 presidential election. It's amazing, though, because, like I say, Facebook, major news outlets, even A.G. Barr right now, right? He's talking about, we haven't found any kind of fraud. This guy's a goddamn rhino. I think somebody may be threatening this man and his family for him to be so... Because, I mean, how stupid can you be? I'm just a little guy here, and I can go on the internet, and I can search all through the counties and states, and I can find all this evidence. But yet the A.G. Barr, you can't find no evidence of voter fraud? Are you kidding me? I got people right here. 150 people charged with voter fraud in Texas since 2004. You don't know about this? You don't know about this, I guess. Right here, Hardin County makes arrest and voter fraud, authorities say. This was another one here. New Jersey guy registering family members without their consent or knowledge, and also dead people. California mayoral candidate charged with voter fraud for submitting over 8,000 false voter registration application, Diaz says. This is just outrageous. I mean, and it goes on. Charges filed in father-son fraud case in Chester County. Right here, these guys right here. Clumsy attempt at trying to cast false ballots in the 2020 presidential election has led to one of the only verifiable instances in Chester County of alleged voter fraud. Police on Monday filed criminal charges against Ralph Thurman of allegedly attempting to vote as another person, his own son, before being discovered by an alert poll worker who recognized him as having voted a short time earlier. So they were going like in and out, doing the same thing, voting over and over again. Mind you, though, this here case goes where they were doing this in multiple districts. So, and then too, like I say, the one thing that's funny is they're all Democrats. And when we look at how the Democrats indoctrinate the people, look what they got the people, these young kids with Antifa doing, out rioting in the streets, looting stores, beating up people, what have you, acting all violent and disturbing, trying to threaten and scare the public. Right now, Democrats are threatening state attorneys, county commissioners, even the people who are coming forward right now, whistleblowers are receiving life-threatening threats by these Democrats. Funny though, they call the Republicans such violent and disruptive disturbances to society. But yet, while they're doing all this insane, threatening people, and they're all being arrested all over the place for voter fraud, and, right here, look at this. Would-be mayoral candidate, another man charged with voter fraud. This was November 18th. 2 men, including one who tried to run for mayor of Southern California City, were charged with voter fraud. I mean, it just keeps going. And then I'll include this here. This is good. This goes from 2003 forward, a report right here, an analysis of voter fraud in the United States. Again, when I read this, I was like, oh my God, it's only Democrats. And really, in truth, when you look at my last video, you see we go all the way back to 1855. And that's where it really starts taking off with the Democrats. Literally, they're the founders of voter fraud. And then when we look at the Civil War, they did the same thing with the mail-in ballot voter fraud in the Civil War. The Democrats did it, and then they did it again in the second election with Lincoln. Then they did it again in 1888. Then they did it again when we get up to Woodrow Wilson. They did it with FDR. FDR tried to make himself a king. We had to have an amendment that limited the terms of president because they were corrupting the election so bad. This guy would have been just president forever if we had not stopped it. It's just amazing. But yet, like I say, social media, Twitter, Facebook, they're all complicit with aiding and assisting in these people trying to lie and fool the public that there's nothing going on here, nothing to see here, nothing's going on, but yet they got all these cases. Now, the funny thing, too, what I wanted to get to, this was hilarious, because they have been trying. North Carolina Republican operative charged in election fraud scheme. Mind you, though, you got to be real careful, because this is the only case the Democrats could find, and boy, they're going to run with it. They're going to run with it, because they're running with it right now. Which you'll see, I think, in the next one here. GOP finally has documented case of election fraud committed by a Republican. Oh, you see that headline right there? They love it, right? That's what they want. But the problem is, guess what? No, that guy's not a Republican. He's a Dino. He's a Democrat. He's a guy who, when you go and you look into the case, like here, that's Dallas, has long voted in the Democratic primaries, but became a registered Republican after the 2016 general election. He's a rhino. He came over to the Democratic Party trying to bring his corruption with him. And when you finish reading the story, you find out that this rhino, who they're trying to claim is a Republican, was a long-standing Democrat, and he's got a long history of voter fraud. I mean, this guy goes back to like 2008. Doing this for Democrats. He was somebody hired by multiple Democrats, and then, he was accidentally, sadly, this guy decided, he had such a good reputation for supposedly being able to win elections for the locals. He thought, well, maybe we could utilize this guy because he must know something. He knows the people in the area or something. So a Republican went ahead and tried to hire this fella. And the guy came over, and now they're trying to say he flipped to be a Republican. This is like the first time this guy's ever done this for a Republican. He's got a long record of corrupt elections with the goddamn Democrats, and he himself is a Democrat. Okay, it's just amazing how they run with this right here. Like here, look at this headline. GOP finally has documented case of election fraud committed by Republicans. They try, but they don't tell you. In this story, they don't tell you. You got to go in this story. I'll keep the links here so you can see it. This is the story here.
Where do I start?
Where you get to see.
I want muscular arms and jacked abs.
Go to the fitness headquarters.
Where this is at playing. Hold on one second, folks. I got to find out
plus build your home gym and get
where that's playing. But what I'm saying is, this guy is no Republican. He is a Democrat. He was always a Democrat. He's been working for the Democrats for years in election fraud, and they know it. They know it. The Republicans now know it. The guy made a big mistake picking this loser to help him with his election, because now it turns out this is their case where they got one. Now they finally got a Republican. They're saying they finally got a Republican. This is amazing, isn't it? Just amazing. This is so amazing that, this is what I'm saying, though. This is how the media works. And then, too, you got to remember, you got the Associated Press is mostly behind this. This is the other thing I didn't pull up, and I wish maybe I should while I'm talking. The Associated Press, so people understand, the Associated Press was charged with aiding and assisting the enemies of the United States in propaganda, both in World War I and World War II, and as well in Vietnam. These people have been helping our world enemies, disgrace us with propaganda now for pretty much most of our history, and since they've been around, the Associated Press. They're treasonous scumbags, okay? And they've always been treasonous, propagating scumbags who will they'll sell our country out in a heartbeat to the foreigners. And the Nazis, they did it in the Nazis in World War II. Several of them went to jail for this in the Associated Press for aiding and assisting the enemies of America during World War II. And yet these are the people who right now we're supposed to trust. People who for decades now, for near 100 years, has been propagating lies for the enemies of America to make America look bad while being an Associated Press in America. This is where, like Trump right now with the new bills he's talking about, we have to get our social media under control. We have to get our news outlets under control. Granted, freedom of the press is a very important thing. No story should not be allowed to be reported, and nothing of the truth should not be banned from being told to the public. But lying, blatant out, fabricating lies, literally going on and lying like they're doing right now, they should be able to be charged. People should be able to go to jail for this. This is because you know what? The public placed trust in that. The youth of our nation, the posterity, place trust in these people, and they believe they're able to believe. Because these kids today, they go, well, they can't lie on TV. They wouldn't come on TV and lie. Yeah, they would, and they are. They're doing it, and it's pretty clear they're doing it. You don't see nothing about any of these cases I'm talking about here with right now ongoing arrests for actual evidence of fact of voter fraud taking place across this country in multiple cities and states, and where literally right now hundreds of people related to the 2020 presidential election of Democrats are being arrested for committing voter fraud while acting as election volunteers or officials within the elections within their cities. Literally hundreds of them right now are being arrested across this country and being charged with voter fraud. But we don't hear this on the news. I just don't understand how can that be on the news. And like I say, though, the one thing that did make the news, which led me to redo this video, was hearing the story about because the reporter, supposedly, what was this, the guy was out in, I can't remember why, I seen it was Raleigh News, that's what it was, Raleigh, I think, North Carolina. The guy was talking about how the only instance he knows of voter fraud is right now GOP, Grand Old Party, finally has documented case election fraud committed by Republicans. He's trying to make it sound like Republicans are the ones who are committing fraud. But you know what? And I was like, what is this? Because I'm shocked to hear. I've been doing a lot of research on who commits the fraud in this country involving in elections. And all I've come up with was Democrats. The only people I come up with trying to stop the damn fraud was the Republicans. So, I was like shocked to see this. So I thought, well, I better look into this, right? So I decided to look into it. And guess what? Like I said, this guy that's him, Dulles, right here. This is the same incidents that we're talking about in this story. This is the guy right here. The Guru of Bladen County is at the center of North Carolina's election troubles. And this guy here is the guy who I'm saying that people don't understand. That's the guy. His name is Dulles, or whatever it was. Let me go back and find that where it's at. I'm going to show you right here because I have it where it shows he was a registered Democrat. All right, let's go back up. One here. Right here, that's it, right there. Dulles, right here, if you can see that on... Dulles had long voted in Democratic primaries but became a registered Republican after the 2016 general election because he was hired by a Republican candidate. He had hired this poor guy over here, made a mistake because this guy had such a good reputation in the area for winning elections. He hired him. Now all of a sudden they're trying to say it's the Republicans' party, but they don't tell you that this guy that got arrested for the fraud is a rhino. He was a prior Democrat, long-standing and helping the Democrats, long-standing for decades, win elections in North Carolina through fraud and corruption, which now they're finding out when they're looking back and they're finding out with this guy. He's been doing this for decades for the Democrats. But, you know, this is the first they got to run with, and it's amazing because, like I say, they go and they run with this scam thing, and they want to have it where GOP finally has documented case of election fraud committed by a Republican. No, you don't, you damn liars. What you got is a rhino. This guy is a rhino. This guy right here is he was a registered Democrat for years, and he was committing voter fraud for Democrats for years in North Carolina. You give me a break. Are you people, you know, I mean, it's just amazing the way they, like I say, these headlines kind of fall along the lines of what Democrats normally do. Let me give you another example. Planned Parenthood. See, Democrats come up with this kind of stuff. They name an organization by Margaret Sanger that literally in the time with Margaret Sanger, she brags about what she's going to do with her eugenics. She wants to exterminate the black race. And like Hitler, she has this vision of like the perfect human race that they're going to try and evolve with their eugenics. But in order to do that, first they need to confine the black race and exterminate them, right? And what are they going to call this? What do you call an organization that wants to do like Hitler and establish a perfect race of humanity and exterminate that of what she considered to be low-class, uneducated white people, and she actually considered that black people might be like a different species of human. In her opinion, that racist woman was disgustingly racist, and she wanted to exterminate the black race because she felt they had nothing to contribute to humanity. So what do you think you would call an organization like this? You know, the Death Squad of Humanity? No, let's call it Planned Parenthood. See, Planned Parenthood. And then the funny thing about Planned Parenthood, see how Democrats do it, like with this headline. GOP finally has documented case of election fraud committed by a Republican. They got a picture of the guy who's now a registered Republican, but they don't tell you that for near 5 decades or 4 decades, this guy was a registered Democrat. They don't tell you that, no. They just tell you right now he's a registered Republican and try and make it look like Republicans are committing voter fraud. Right? Who's it? It's kind of like Planned Parenthood. See, Planned Parenthood says Planned Parenthood. But what's the primary business of Planned Parenthood? Stopping parenting by abortions and birth control. Right? This is what they do. The majority of their whole cause is abortions and birth control and breeding control among the race. They want, you know, to control, make their perfect race with eugenics. Really. This is the deal. So, I mean, and that's the kind of things they do. But I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention and understand, you know, like I'm saying, because like when you look here and you see on, you know, Facebook with Joe Biden is a projected winner, that's not true yet. You see, with all the voter fraud and everything going on right now, the electors haven't cast their vote yet. You can't project that. You can't project, but they're projecting this because you know who really is projecting this? Right here, sources, Reuters, NEP, and Edison, and others, right? Others are Associated Press. The Associated Press is the one that have the winning so-called electoral college map where they give it to Joe Biden is the Associated Press, the goddamn treasonous no-good scumbag traitors from World War I and World War II, who literally were propagating for the enemies to try and seek sympathy of the American people for Nazis, right? And they had people in their organization that actually went to jail for aiding and abetting the enemies of America through propagation. Really, you know, and what gets me is how can we allow this organization to still function in the United States? I have no idea. Maybe that's our problem. We need to start making sure people are held accountable. Like anybody who is in the political realm of this, of the Democratic elected officials, because, you know, as an elected official doing this and taking part with the Democratic Party themselves, the actual establishment, I'm not talking about the public idiot voter of the Democrat, I'm talking about the elected officials. The problem we have with what you read in most of these cases here, and you'll see it as you read these, I'll put links, it all states, you know, how this person probably can get 5 years, but it's going to turn into like maybe 3 months time served and probation, or fines of $10,000 where they can buy their way out of this. And most of the Democratic establishment parties already got funding set aside for these people. That's why these people are so willing to do it, because they're already told they're going to give them a lawyer. They're going to do, we see like they're doing with Antifa right now, or Black Lives Matter. These people go in and they riot, they destroy towns, they burn down houses, they burn down businesses, they loot stores and businesses, they destroy entire communities. But the Democratic establishment comes in and pays for their lawyers, gets them bailed out of jail, has the state attorneys in most of these Democratic districts where it's taking place already in their pocket, and the state attorney is a Democrat themselves. They're on board with it. They're going to dismiss the charges. People are getting away with it. They're getting away with it. And this is what's going to happen with the voter fraud. They're going to get away with it. The same thing, too, which I want to close out with right here. We, the American people, have to wake up, and we have to realize, and this is no joke, we have to realize what's going on here. These people have literally tried to steal an election, okay? And they're in the pockets of foreign interests of the communist Chinese and the totalitarian Islamic slave states with the Muslims, okay? This is who these people are rubbing elbows with and have been being, and they're in the pockets of them. Joe Biden, we know, is bought and paid for. So in truth, the ones behind this is foreign interests. The Democratic Party has been nothing but a platform now for 50 years for foreign interests to be able to come in and enter into America and infiltrate our nation with indoctrinating agents that they have placed obviously within our public school systems and our higher education systems, because when you look at the posterity today, these kids don't even know anything about America. They know nothing of their history. They're dumbed down, educated freaking idiots. It's disgraceful right now what the American posterity, I mean, look at that. They got these kids too. They robbed. This is a communist tactic to steal their identity, steal their pride, steal their joy in who they are as in an ideology of a people. Instead of being proud Americans, they're ashamed Americans because they've been indoctrinated to be shameful. Okay? And they bash down. They're being bashed down for being Americans. They're being bashed down for being white. They're being bashed down for being black. If you're a black Republican, you're being bashed down. You're a white Republican, you're being bashed down. I mean, it's just disgraceful what we see going on. People bullying in school and what have you. These kids being pushed around. Kids being beat up if they support the president. I'm 56 years old. Never in my life did I ever see kids get beat up in school because of who they wanted to vote for or who they supported as president in high school or in college. These things never happen up until now. And the only people behind this stuff is the damn Democrats. These disgusting, evil, no good treasonous scumbags. And I'm going to tell you right now, we the Republican people of the true republic of this country, we need to start standing up and we need to take our place and we need to put an end to this. Because I'm going to tell you right now, and I've said this repeatedly before, the only way you're going to stop evil in this world is to combat that evil with an equal or greater evil for good intent. That's it. You understand? These people will threaten, kill, murder, maim, beat, terrorize their way to get what they want. As long as that we sit here idle and do nothing about it. They're going to keep doing this. And they have the world's allied of terrorists behind them to terrorize from the world on us. Either we're going to stand up or we're going to go to our knees. I'm not willing to go to our knees. And I'm going to tell you right now, we cannot let this happen, because if we allow this to happen, America becomes a goddamn banana republic, and where everything we're led to believe that we have is bullshit. This would make the Constitution fake. This would make our law, our justice system, our Congress, our House, everything about us, our government, our entire nation, everything of what we believe in morals and values and principles as Americans, everything would be fake. It would all be a delusional, fake world. And that's what they want. This is why they're indoctrinating the posterity like they are. This is what Hitler did in the 1930s with the youth groups, indoctrinating these kids in the brown coats back then. This is how they did it. They stole their identity, they stole their dignity, their pride, and they replaced it with something of what was the agenda of the Nazi Party. You see, they gave up everything in life to be a Nazi, because that was the only thing that they were indoctrinated in that was good, and they knew nothing else, because nobody was paying attention in Germany to what was going on with their youth. Hitler was running those youth groups from the 1920s all the way up until 1933 when he became Chancellor of Germany. And you know what? There was enough handwriting on the wall to know at the time he spent in prison and everything about the fascist ideas and the communist ideas and the sick totalitarianism ideas he had prior to 1933. I mean, handwriting was on the wall. But obviously, no one, in my opinion, upon like when he got arrested and he was put in prison, he should have got a death sentence. They should have cut the goddamn head off that freaking nut. It should have been clear then what he was doing. They knew about the Hitler Youth groups by the time he was going to prison. They knew what he was doing with those kids. It was disgusting. I mean, disgraceful, the indoctrination, what he did. And when people say today, so you understand the extremity of what he did, a lot of people today, when you talk about the Nazi Party and what happened with the World War II and the inhumanity, people say, I just don't understand how those people could do it. And you'll have some people say, they said they were just doing their job. And this is theoretical. This is what people want to think. But when you really look into the federal archives and you look into the historical facts and you look into the letters and the actual evidence of documentation involving with the government and the things that took place, you come to find out, no, it wasn't that they were just doing their job. Those of the majority of many who were the Nazi commanders in the Nazi army were prior the children of the 1920 Hitler Youth groups. They started indoctrinating these people who would grow up to be the adults that would be the heads of the Nazi army when they were young children. They had been raising them for 20 years, indoctrinating them for 15, 20 years with Nazism. They turned them into killing, hating, empty, blank, human, destructive, evil beings is what Hitler did with those children from the Hitler Youth groups in the 1920s. And these became the commanders, the generals, the leaders of the Nazi parties, the inciters of the browncoats. These were them grown up. These were those kids from the Hitler Youth groups grown up that led the Nazi army. So understand, it wasn't they were doing their job. They were like our children are being groomed to be right now. They were blanks. They had no identity. They had no one that loved them. They had no one that cared about them. No one that understood them. And they were so confounded they didn't even know what they were themselves until they were told what they were. And they were told they were Nazis. And that's what's happening with our children right now. As you see with all these youth with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, these are misguided youth, mostly out of inner city ghettos, broken families with no structures, no stability, no foundation, no economical hope, nothing but a criminal environment of nothing but drugs and a failing society. They have nothing to latch onto to give them hope. And the only thing they can find is unity among others like them, and the support of that unity that's coming from the Democratic Party. And what the Democratic Party is doing with the unfortunate, totally deprived youth and posterity of these inner city Democratic-controlled ghettos, the Democratic Party is doing with them exactly what Hitler did with the youth groups in 1920. They're indoctrinating these kids, turning them into violent assets to go out and terrorize the American people, terrorize the communities outside of their area to try and scare people to give in to the will of the Democratic Party. But here's the good news. The society itself, as Americans, us as true Americans, outnumber them greatly. No big deal. There's no real threat as far as, and with Antifa and these young kids too, we can hopefully correct and salvage some of them by waking them up. But as far as with the government establishment itself, they have no chance against us. And I'm sorry, when you look at the extreme of the damage being done, and that has been done, how many, literally hundreds of thousands of American posterity, our children, that of our posterity, Americans, have been indoctrinated and may not be salvageable, will never have any pursuit of happiness. They will know nothing but what has been ingrained in them. They will live a shameful life within the shame shell of their own hating of themselves, because that's what they've been indoctrinated to do by these Democrats, and they're lost forever. What they have done could affect for generations, and it will deprive people of full life. Parents out there have lost their children through this. And I imagine that there's a lot of Dinos, Democrat name only parents, that supported the Democratic Party, believing that these were the civil, fighters for society, but in truth were just ignorant Dinos. They didn't really know the truth, never took the time to learn the truth about who the establishment of the Democratic Party was. Because if they did, they would know these people have been treasonous traitors within our nation since the founding of this nation. And I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes down to understanding the truth of who is involved with this, we need to set an example that will make it clear that we will not tolerate this kind of corruption. We will not tolerate this kind of treason. We will not tolerate this kind of affliction on society and that of our American posterity and the American people. Because the harm that's been done with the scamdemic, as well as all the issues that the Democrats have caused in the last 4 years, is just beyond. It's just beyond comprehension, and it's beyond forgiving. These people need to be made an example of. An example that will deter anyone ever in the future. And I'm going to tell you right now, straight up, if there's a civil war and it breaks out, There's no laws and there's no rules of engagement in war. And of course, the president may have to issue death sentences for certain people of treason. And that's a hard thing for any American to want to do. But I will volunteer. I will volunteer for the president if he needs an executioner to kill these people. I will volunteer. I will volunteer because I think of my grandchildren, my children, my nieces, my nephews, my brothers, my sisters, their children, their children's children, my great nieces and nephews. These people, what they're doing could affect generations to come, and they're doing it totally without no conscience. They're inhumane. And when I think about the harm that this could do, I think of my grandchildren being enslaved, taking under and suffering under like the Jews were put through in Nazi Germany because of these sick, disgusting, no good, sellout goddamn Democrats. Believe me, I could do the job. I could do the job. So I'm letting it know right out there, Mr. President, if you need a volunteer, I'm your guy right here. When the shit hits the fan, I'll be your guy. Or if any militias, if it comes down to just the people, well, we have to do it. And those things, I'm your volunteer right here. I'm your guy. So I just wanted to say that. And then, just so I want to let off, like I'm just saying. So here, I'm going to include links with all this. You got all this going on right here. This is prior. I did this in a prior video. Okay, and it showed about, in the prior video, where we had 1,302 cases, 1,125 deaths from 2014 forward, right? Or 2016 forward. And and then when we go here, these are all recent cases from this November's election, 2020 presidential election. All these different cases of people being arrested. Right now, hundreds and hundreds of cases of voter fraud going on, but you're not hearing about it on the news. And then too, like I said, the real kicker was at the end here, where they talk about, they finally got a Republican for voter fraud. First time in history we got a Republican. Turns out he's not a Republican, he's a rhino. He was a long-standing registered Democrat, and he was a long-standing voter fraud corrupt organizer who's won many over the decades elections for corrupt Democrats. And he accidentally, obviously the Republican didn't know. I don't know, maybe he did. I really can't say that. I don't know. But obviously a Republican hired this guy, and then he registered with the Republican Party to stay loyal to who he was now working for and getting paid by to do his corruption. But the funny thing about it is all those decades he was doing it for Democrats, he didn't get caught. He didn't get caught until he did it for a Republican. Now he's busted. He's busted. But rather than them trying to say the truth about it, because, this person, when he found out about the deal too, is open to agreement to do anything to make sure the elections are done with integrity. He has no idea, he says, about what was going on, and I got no reason to disbelieve him. And then this guy here, but like I say, the news media, see what they do here? They turn it into a heading like I said, Planned Parenthood. No, Planned Parenthood doesn't plan any goddamn parenting for anybody because they do nothing but abortions and birth control to stop parenting. Same thing with this stuff here, what we see with the media. They constantly use false headlines and where they try to make it out to propagate what they want you to believe without telling you the full story. Now, imagine that GOP finally has documented case election fraud involving a Democrat who's been doing corruption in elections now for Democrats for decades. That's what that headline should read. Because when you get the full scoop on the story, which I'll include links here to let you know who this guy is, okay? And that's all I just wanted to say. I just wanted to update from the election fraud that's been going on. Inform people that there are actually right now hundreds of arrests being made in multiple states across the country involved to the 2020 election ongoing right now related to stuffing the ballots with dead people votes, senior citizen votes in convalescent centers that are literally comatose, people on disability, people in nursing homes, hospitals, bedridden at home, totally like old. They've been scanning, from what I understand, the Social Security disability records and getting their names and information to be able to fill out mail-in ballots under their names and then voting for these people by the tens of thousands. This is what I'm hearing. I have, no evidence of yet to prove that, but I do have evidence of that because that's why I keep scanning, because it's coming up. We have some of these cases here where it says that they were voting for the dead. And as well, I had a case in my last video that talked about how they were doing this with convalescent centers and old age homes, and where they were registering the people through the Social Security that they were getting their information that way, and then registering the people to vote and then voting for those people without those people's knowledge. Not to mention as well, many of them are deceased. They get the deceased records as well from Social Security disability when that stuff ends as a database of deceased. they take that database of recent deceased, register them, and vote for them. This is what I'm being told. But anyway, so we'll leave off with that, and I just wanted to update everybody on that, give everybody this to consider. Understand my last video was prior cases that were back from the 2016 election, and even back a little bit to the 2014 elections that were going on in state levels. But this now is nothing but cases going on from this election. Right here, 2020, involving people being arrested for voter fraud in many cities and states across the country right now. But nobody's talking about this on the news. Nobody's talking about the arrests being made. Nobody's talking about all the thousands of cases. This guy, the one guy, 8,000 people, 8,000 people he falsely registered and voted for. Really? Come on, cut me a break. But I'm just saying. So take this information. I'll include links to everything I have below. And hope you enjoyed my video. Thank you for your time if you did watch my video. And I'll see you next time. Have a good evening, everyone.